Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the strange signal came through. He was sitting in his chair on the bridge of the Terra Nova, watching the stars drift by outside the big window. The ship was quiet except for the soft hum of the engines. Most of his crew was still sleeping not. It was 3:47 in the morning, ship time. They were in the middle of nowhere, exploring a star system called Kepler 442. There were no planets with life here, just empty space and rocks floating around a yellow sun. It was supposed to be a boring mission. The Terra Nova was not a big ship. It had 43 people on board, all humans. They were explorers, not soldiers. Their job was to map new star systems and look for interesting things. The ship had some small weapons, but nothing powerful. It was built for flying long distances and studying planets, not for fighting. Jake was 35 years old and had been the captain for 3 years. He liked his job because he got to see new places that no human had ever seen before. But sometimes the work was lonely. Space was very big, and humans were still new to traveling between the stars. The other alien races in the galaxy thought humans were not very important. They had better technology and bigger ships. The Galactic Council, which was like a government, for all the different alien species, treated humans like children. They gave humans permission to explore some areas, but only the safe, empty parts of space. Jake did not mind this much. He was happy to explore anywhere, even if it was not the most exciting places. But sometimes he wondered what humans could do if they were given a real chance to prove themselves. The signal that woke him up was very strange. At first, it sounded like normal space noise. But Lisa Campbell, his communications officer, noticed something different about it. She was young and very good at her job. She could hear patterns in radio signals that other people missed. "Captain," Lisa said, turning around in her chair, "you need to hear this." Jake put down his coffee and walked over to her station. Lisa was 26 years old, with short brown hair and smart green eyes. She had been working on the Terra Nova for 2 years, and Jake trusted her completely. "What is it?" Jake asked. Lisa pressed some buttons on her computer. The speakers filled with static and crackling sounds. It sounded like normal space noise, the kind of radio waves that stars and planets make naturally. But Lisa pointed to her screen, which showed waves and patterns. "Listen carefully," she said. "Every 37 seconds, the same pattern repeats. Someone is hiding a message in this noise." Jake listened harder. After a few minutes, he could hear it too. A tiny pattern buried in all the static. It was very clever. Anyone listening would think it was just natural radio noise from space. "Can you clean it up?" Jake asked. Lisa nodded and started working. She was very good with computers and communication equipment. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls, adjusting settings and filtering out the background noise. Ryan Parker, the chief science officer, came over to see what they were doing. Ryan was a tall man with glasses who loved solving puzzles. He had been sleeping, but the activity on the bridge woke him up. "What have you found?" Ryan asked. "Someone is broadcasting a hidden message," Jake explained. "Lisa is trying to decode it." Ryan looked excited. Finding alien messages was exactly the kind of thing he loved. He had studied many different alien languages and communication methods. He was one of the best code breakers in the human exploration fleet. The 3 of them worked together for the next hour. Lisa cleaned up the signal while Ryan tried to figure out what language it was in. Jake watched and helped when he could, but mostly he let his experts do their work. The bridge slowly filled with other crew members as people woke up and heard about the discovery. Amy Chun, the navigator, came to see what was happening. Greg Martinez, the weapons officer, also joined them. Even Bobby Walsh, the chief engineer, came up from the engine room. Everyone was excited. Finding alien messages was rare, especially for a small exploration ship like theirs. Most of the time, they just mapped empty star systems and took pictures of rocks. Finally, Ryan made a breakthrough. "I think this is Zephyrian," he said, pointing at his computer screen. "The mathematical structure matches their language patterns." The Zephyrians were one of the most advanced alien races in the galaxy. They were masters of energy and technology. Their ships could do things that seemed like magic to humans. They were also generally friendly and peaceful, unlike some other alien races. "Can you translate it?" Jake asked. Ryan worked for another 30 minutes, typing and calculating. Everyone watched quietly, holding their breath. Finally, text appeared on the main screen of the bridge. Jake read it out loud. "Zephyrian Research Station Omega-7 under siege. Hostile force overwhelming defenses. Galactic Council fleet destroyed. Requesting immediate assistance. Coordinates follow. Time remaining 14 hours. The bridge went completely silent. Everyone stared at the message, trying to understand what it meant. The Zephyrians were some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. If their defenses were failing, whatever was attacking them must be incredibly dangerous. And if a Galactic Council fleet had already been destroyed, what hope did a small human ship have? Amy Chun was the first to speak. "Captain, those coordinates are 6 hours away if we push our engines to maximum speed." Jake studied the numbers on the screen. They would have just enough time to reach the research station, but it would be cutting things very close. And they had no idea what they would find when they got their standard procedure said they should report this to Earth Command and wait for instructions. A proper rescue fleet could be assembled and sent to help. But that would take days, maybe weeks. The message said they only had 14 hours. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all young, eager people who had joined the exploration program to see the galaxy and make a difference. None of them were trained soldiers. Their ship was designed for peaceful exploration, not combat. But Jake could see something in their eyes. They wanted to help. It did not matter that they were outgunned and outnumbered. It did not matter that other species thought humans were weak and unimportant. People were in trouble, and that was all that mattered. "Amy," Jake said finally, "plot a course for those coordinates. Maximum burn." Amy smiled and turned back to her controls. "Yes, sir." The Terra Nova changed direction and began accelerating toward the unknown danger ahead. The Terra Nova flew through space faster than it had ever gone before. The engines were pushed to their limit, making the whole ship vibrate. Jake could feel the deck plates humming under his feet. Bobby Walsh had warned him that flying this fast for so long was dangerous, but they had no choice. 6 hours later, they dropped out of hyperspace and saw hell. The Zephyrian Research Station hung in space like a dying star. It was huge, made of crystal and metal that normally glowed with bright blue light. But now the light was weak and flickering. Parts of the station were dark completely. Black scorch marks covered the surface where weapons had hit it. Around the station were dozens of enemy ships. They were sleek and dark, shaped like hunting animals. Jake recognized them immediately from the intelligence reports. They were Devari ships, and there were at least 50 of them. "Holy hell," whispered Greg Martinez from his weapons station. His face was pale as he looked at the tactical display. "Captain, we are seriously outnumbered here." The Devari were a warrior race that traveled in fleets, attacking and conquering whoever they found. They had been raiding the outer systems for months, destroying colonies and stealing resources. Their ships were fast and deadly, with weapons that could punch through the strongest shields. Jake studied the battle scene on the main screen. The research station's shields were failing, flickering on and off like a broken light bulb. He could see explosions on the surface as the Devari continued their attack. The station was dying, and everyone inside would die with it. Captain. Lisa called from her communications station. I'm getting a transmission from the station. It's Director Vex High himself. A hologram appeared in the center of the bridge. It showed a tall, thin being with silver skin and glowing blue eyes. This was a Zephyrian, one of the most advanced species in the galaxy. Director Vex High looked tired and scared, which was frightening to see. Zephyrians were usually calm and confident. Human vessel, the director said, his voice shaking slightly. You must leave this area immediately. The Devari have weapons far beyond your technology level. Your ship cannot survive here. You will only add to the death count. Jake stepped forward so the director could see him clearly. Director Vex High. We received your distress call. We came here to help. How many people are on that station? The alien's eyes widened with surprise. You came here to help us, but you are only one small ship. The Devari have already destroyed an entire Galactic Council battle fleet. 27 warships, all more powerful than yours, were eliminated in less than an hour. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. A full Council battle fleet was an impressive force, with ships that could destroy planets. If the Devari had beaten them so easily, what chance did the Terra Nova have? How many people, Director? Jake asked again. 312 researchers and their families, Vex High replied. But Captain, you must understand. We have been fighting for 18 hours. Our shields will fail within minutes. Even if you could somehow defeat the Devari fleet, there is no time to evacuate so many people. Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. Amy Chun was studying the navigation display, trying to figure out how to get close to the station. Greg Martinez was checking their weapons, even though everyone knew they were hopelessly outgunned. Lisa Campbell was monitoring the Devari communications, listening to their battle chatter. These were not soldiers. Amy was a 28-year-old woman who had joined the exploration program because she loved mathematics and star charts. Greg was a former mining engineer who had never fired a shot in anger. Lisa was fresh out of the academy on her first deep space mission, but Jake could see something in their faces that he recognized. It was the same thing he felt in his own heart. They were not going to run away and let 300 people die, even if staying meant their own destruction. Director, Jake said, we need 15 minutes to get your people off that station. Can your shields hold for 15 minutes? The Zephyrian looked at him like he was crazy. Perhaps if we reroute all remaining power to the defensive systems. But Captain, how do you plan to evacuate 300 people with 50 enemy warships? Surrounding us? It is impossible. Jake smiled, and it was not a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that people make when they are about to do something incredibly stupid and dangerous. Director, leave the impossible stuff to us. Humans are pretty good at impossible. He turned to his crew. Amy, I need you to plot a course that takes us right through the middle of their fleet. Make it look like we're going to ram their biggest ship. Amy's eyes went wide. Sir, that would be suicide. Greg, what's the status on our weapons? Greg checked his displays. We have mining lasers, Captain. They're not designed for ship-to-ship combat, but I might be able to modify them. Maybe blind a few enemy sensors, but nothing more. Do it. Bobby, Jake called down to engineering through the intercom. I need our engines running at maximum power. Past maximum if you can manage it. Bobby's voice came back through the speaker, sounding worried. Captain, our reactors are already running hot. If I push them any harder, we might have a cascade failure. Do it anyway. Jake looked at the tactical display again. 50 Devari warships against one human exploration vessel. By every rule of space combat, this was hopeless. The Terra Nova would be destroyed in seconds, but Jake had an idea that was. Either brilliant or completely insane. Maybe both. Lisa, I need you to start broadcasting on every frequency we have. Music, old movies, comedy shows, whatever entertainment files we have in our database. Make as much noise as possible. Lisa looked confused. Sir, that will make it easier for them to target us. That's the idea. I want every Devari ship in that fleet looking at us instead of the research station. The crew stared at him. Jake could see the questions in their eyes, but they trusted him. They began preparing for what looked like a suicide run. On the main screen, Director Vex High was still watching them with amazement. Captain Morrison, what are you planning to do? Jake sat down in his command chair and buckled his safety harness. Something that's never been tried before, Director. Hold on tight. Terra Nova began accelerating toward the enemy fleet. The Terra Nova charged straight toward the Devari fleet, like a tiny fish swimming toward a school of sharks. On every radio frequency, the ship was broadcasting Earth music, comedy shows, and old movies. To anyone listening, it sounded like complete chaos. Commander Thakmer stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the approaching human ship with confusion. He was a tall, powerful Devari with dark skin covered in battle scars. He had conquered dozens of worlds and destroyed hundreds of enemy ships. But he had never seen anything like this. What are they doing? He asked his tactical officer. The younger Devari checked his instruments again. Sir, they appear to be broadcasting entertainment programs while flying directly at us. Their course will take them right into our hull in 3 minutes. Are they trying to ram us? It appears so, sir. But their ship is too small to cause significant damage to our flagship. Thakmer studied the tactical display. The human ship was tiny compared to his warships. It had weak weapons and light armor. By all logic, it should have run away the moment it saw his fleet. Instead, it was doing something that made no sense at all. Perhaps they have gone insane, suggested his second-in-command. Fear can break weak minds. But something about the situation bothered Thakmer. In his long career as a warrior, he had learned to trust his instincts. And his instincts were telling him that something was wrong with this picture. On the Terra Nova, Jake watched the enemy ships on his tactical display. The Devari fleet was spreading out, trying to avoid collision with his ship. Their perfect attack formation was starting to break apart. It's working, Amy reported from her navigation station. They're moving out of our way. Good. Greg, status on those mining lasers? Greg was working frantically at his weapons station. I've got them recalibrated, Captain. They won't destroy anything, but I can overload their sensor arrays. Blind them for a few minutes. Lisa, keep broadcasting. Make us the loudest, most annoying thing in this entire star system. The plan was starting to work. The Devari ships were no longer focused on the research station. All their attention was on the crazy human ship that was broadcasting comedy shows while flying straight at them. Inside the research station, Director Vex High was coordinating the evacuation with his staff. The humans had given them 15 minutes, and he was determined not to waste a single second. Dr. Kylanth, he called to his chief scientist, initiate emergency evacuation protocol 7. All personnel to the escape pods immediately. Dr. Kylanth was a brilliant Cepharian scientist who had spent her life studying quantum physics. She had never been in a combat situation before, but she could see what the humans were trying to do. Director, she said, the humans are sacrificing themselves. For us. We cannot let their deaths be meaningless. I know, Vex High replied. That is why we must move quickly. Throughout the station, researchers and their families were running toward the escape pod bays. Children were crying, and adults were trying to carry important research data. Everyone knew they might not survive, but the humans had given them hope. Back on the Terra Nova, Jake was watching his plan unfold. The Devari fleet was in chaos. Ships were breaking formation to avoid the approaching human vessel. Some were accidentally getting in each other's way. "Captain," Amy called out, "we're about to pass through their formation. What do we do when we reach the other side?" "We turn around and do it again," Jake replied. His crew looked at him like he was crazy, but they trusted him. Jake had led them safely through many dangerous situations during their exploration missions. If he thought this insane plan would work, they would follow him. The Terra Nova flew between two massive Devari warships, so close that Jake could see the alien writing on their hulls. The enemy ships were trying to target them, but the human ship was moving too fast and too unpredictably. Greg hit their sensors. Now. Greg fired the modified mining lasers at the nearest Devari ships. The beams struck their sensor arrays, causing explosions of sparks and smoke. The enemy ships were temporarily blinded, unable to see what was happening around them. "Direct hit," Greg reported. "Their targeting systems are down. Lisa, patch me through to the research station." Director Vexhi's face appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Jake could see Zephyrians running through corridors, carrying children and equipment. "Captain Morrison," the director said, "we have launched the first group of escape pods, but we need more time." "How much more time?" 10 minutes, maybe 15. Jake looked at his tactical display. The Devari were starting to regroup. Commander Thicmer was shouting orders at his fleet, trying to restore order. Soon they would figure out what the humans were really doing. "You'll get your time, Director. Amy, bring us around for another pass." The Terra Nova turned in a tight circle and headed back toward the enemy fleet. This time, the Devari were ready for them. Several ships had moved to block their path. "Captain," Amy said nervously, "they're not moving out of our way this time. Then we go around them." "Lisa, start broadcasting those old war movies. Make it loud." The human ship began weaving between the enemy vessels, like a dancer moving through a crowd. It was flying in ways that should have been impossible for a ship of its size. The Devari had never seen anything like it. Commander Thicmer was getting frustrated. How are they doing this? Their ship should have been destroyed by now. His tactical officer checked the sensors again. "Sir, they appear to be using their engines in ways we have never seen. They are not following standard flight patterns." That was the key difference. Other alien races flew their ships according to established tactics and procedures. They had rules for everything. But humans were making up their tactics as they went along. When the Terra Nova's shield started failing, Bobby rerouted power from the life support systems. When their weapons overheated, Greg used the waste heat to confuse enemy sensors. When their navigation computer crashed, Amy plotted courses by hand using star charts. The human crew were improvising solutions to problems that other species would consider impossible to solve. They were turning every disadvantage into an advantage, every setback into a new opportunity. "Captain," Lisa reported, "I'm getting messages from across the galaxy. Everyone is watching us." Jake nodded grimly. Win or lose, humanity was about to make a very big impression on the galaxy. Across the galaxy, beings from hundreds of different worlds were watching the impossible battle unfold. In the great chambers of the Galactic Council, ancient creatures who had ruled the stars for thousands of years stared at their screens in amazement. Council Speaker Zolfin was one of the oldest beings in the galaxy. His species had built their first starships when humans were still living in caves. He had seen the rise and fall of entire civilizations, but he had never seen anything like what was happening in the Kepler 442 system. How are they still alive? He asked his military advisor. Military advisor Hector was a massive creature with 4 arms and scales like armor. He had studied warfare for centuries and commanded fleets that conquered star systems. But the human tactics made no sense to him. Speaker Zalthun, by every rule of space combat, the human ship should have been destroyed in the first 30 seconds. They are outnumbered 50-1. Their weapons are primitive. Their shields are weak. They should be dead. Yet they continue to fight. Yes, Speaker, and somehow they are winning. On the tactical display, they could see the Terra Nova dancing through the Davray fleet like a leaf in a storm. The human ship was damaged, leaking air and energy, but it kept moving. Every time the enemy tried to corner it, the humans found a new way to escape. Look at this, Hector said, pointing to the screen. When their main engines failed, they used their maneuvering thrusters to fly sideways. When their shields collapsed, they vented atmosphere to create a smokescreen. When their weapons stopped working, they used their cargo bay doors as makeshift armor. Zolfane leaned forward in his ancient chair. They are adapting faster than the Devari can respond. It is more than that, Speaker. They are doing things that should not be possible. They are breaking every rule of space combat and somehow making it work. The old speaker nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand something important. They do not know the rules, so they cannot be limited by them. Back at the battle, Commander Thakmer was losing his mind with frustration. His perfect fleet was falling apart. 2 of his ships had collided while trying to avoid the crazy human vessel. 3 more had damaged their weapons by firing too rapidly. The entire formation was in chaos. Sir, his tactical officer reported, the human ship is coming around for another pass. They are broadcasting children's songs now. Children's songs? Thakmer roared. They are mocking us. But the humans were not mocking anyone. Lisa Campbell was broadcasting whatever she could find in their entertainment database. She had already used up all the action movies and comedy shows. Now she was down to children's programs and educational videos. Captain, she called to Jake, I'm running out of material to broadcast. Keep going, Jake replied. Broadcast the ship's maintenance manuals if you have to. The Terra Nova was falling apart around them. The hull was cracked in several places. The lights flickered on and off. The artificial gravity kept cutting out, making everyone float in their seats. But the crew kept working. Bobby Walsh was performing miracles in the engine room. Half of his equipment was broken, but he kept the ship moving by rerouting power through backup systems that were never meant to handle such loads. Captain, Bobby's voice came through the intercom. I don't know how much more the engines can take. We're running on prayers and spare parts down here. Just keep us moving, Bobby. A few more minutes. Amy Chun was plotting courses without a working navigation computer. She was using star charts and her own mathematical skills to calculate where to fly next. Her head was bleeding from where she had hit it during a sharp turn, but she ignored the pain. Greg Martinez had turned their mining lasers into weapons, their cargo bay doors into shields, and their waste heat into a defensive screen. He was inventing new ways to fight as fast as he could think of them. Captain, Greg reported, I've got an idea. What if we use our atmospheric processors to create a false sensor signature? Make it look like we're 3 ships instead of 1? Do it. On the research station, the evacuation was almost complete. Director Vex High watched the last group of families board the escape pods. Children clung to their parents, scared but hopeful. The adults carried data crystals containing years of important research. That is everyone, Dr. Kylanth reported. All 312 people are now in escape pods. Launch them. Vex High ordered. Get them as far from the battle as possible. The escape pods shot away from the dying research station like seeds from a flower. They were small and fast, harder for the Devari to target. Most of the enemy ships were still focused on the Terra Nova anyway, but Commander Thakmer finally realized what was happening. They are not trying to defeat us, he said to his officers. They are buying time for an evacuation. All ships, Target the escape pods. Several Davari warships turned toward the fleeing pods, their weapons charging. But Jake had been waiting for this moment. Amy, ram course for their flagship. Full power. Sir, that really will be suicide this time. Trust me. The Terra Nova turned toward Commander Thigmer's massive ship and began accelerating. But this time, Jake was not bluffing. He really was going to ram the enemy flagship. All ships, Thigmer, ordered, concentrate fire on the human vessel. Destroy them now. 50 Davari warships turned their weapons toward the tiny Terra Nova. Energy beams and missile barrages filled the space around them. The human ship's shields collapsed completely. Hull plates were blown away. Fires started in several compartments, but the Terra Nova kept coming. Captain, Lisa called out, our communications are down. Life support is failing. We've lost half our engines. Keep going, Jake ordered. The ship was dying around them, but they were almost at the flagship. Commander Thigmer's ship was huge, 10 times larger than the Terra Nova. If they hit it at full speed, both ships would be destroyed. But Jake was counting on something. He was betting that Thigmer would not want to sacrifice his own flagship to kill one small human ship Dot at the last second. The Davari flagship fired its engines and moved out of the way. The Terra Nova flew past the enemy ship so close that Jake could see Davari faces through the windows. Then they were through the fleet and into open space. Status report, Jake called out. We're alive, Amy reported with amazement. Somehow, we're still alive. Behind them, the Davari fleet was in complete disorder. Ships were scattered across space, some damaged, some confused, all wondering what had just happened, and the escape pods carrying 312 Zephyrian researchers were safely away, flying toward the nearest friendly system. The impossible rescue had worked. 3 weeks after the battle, Jake Morrison sat in his quarters on the Terra Nova, reading reports from across the galaxy. The ship was docked at Kepler Station for repairs. Half the hull had been replaced, and the engines were completely rebuilt. But the crew was the same, and they were all heroes now. The rescue of the Zephyrian research station had changed everything. News of the impossible battle had spread to every world in the galaxy. Humans, who had been ignored as a minor species, were suddenly the most talked about people in space. Director Vexhai knocked on Jake's door and entered. The tall Zephyrian looked much better than he had during the battle. His silver skin was bright again, and his blue eyes were calm. Captain Morrison, he said, I wanted to thank you again before I leave for home. Jake stood up and shook the alien's hand. You don't need to thank us, Director. We just did what anyone would do. Vexhai smiled sadly. That is where you are. Wrong, Captain. We sent distress calls to 47 different species. You were the only ones who came. That statement hit Jake hard. 47 different species had received the same message, and only humans had been willing to help. It made him both proud and sad at the same time. The Galactic Council has requested a meeting with your government, Vexhai continued. They want to discuss humanity's role in galactic affairs. Jake nodded. He had heard rumors about this. Earth's leaders were excited about the opportunity, but also nervous. Humans had never been treated as equals by the other species before. What do you think they'll want? Jake asked. I think they want to understand how you did what you did. The battle recordings have been studied by military experts from every major civilization. No one can explain how you survived, let alone succeeded. After Vexhai left, Jake walked through the station to visit his crew. They were all dealing with their sudden fame in different ways. Some loved the attention, while others found it uncomfortable. He found Lisa Campbell in the station's communication center, teaching young alien cadets about human broadcasting techniques. Several different species were listening to her explain how she had hidden the Terra Nova's true position using music and entertainment programs. The key, Lisa was saying, is to make noise that sounds random, but actually has a pattern. The enemy expects military communications, so they ignore entertainment broadcasts. A young Altarian cadet raised his hand. But why did you use children's songs? Lisa smiled. Because they were the last thing the enemy would expect in a battle. Sometimes the best hiding place is right out in the open. Jake moved on and found Greg Martinez in the engineering section, working with alien technicians to study the Terra Nova's weapons modifications. The aliens were amazed by what Greg had accomplished with simple mining equipment. We do not understand, said a Corellian. Engineer. These modifications should not have been effective against military-grade shields. Greg shrugged. They weren't supposed to be weapons at all. I just needed to blind their sensors for a few seconds. Sometimes you have to use what you have instead of what you wish you had. In the medical bay, Jake found Amy-chan recovering from her injuries. She was surrounded by alien mathematicians who wanted to understand how she had plotted courses without a navigation computer. The calculations should have taken hours, said a Viridian scientist. How did you do them so quickly? Amy looked embarrassed by all the attention. I just used basic geometry and star charts. When you don't have time to be perfect, you learn to be fast instead. Finally, Jake found Bobby Walsh in the station's main engineering section, explaining human repair techniques to a group of amazed alien engineers. They were studying pieces of the Terra Nova's engines, trying to understand how Bobby had kept them running far beyond their design limits. The secret, Bobby was saying, is knowing that every rule has exceptions. The manual says these engines can't run above 100% power, but the manual is written by people who never had 300 lives depending on them. A Zephyrian engineer asked, but how did you know the engines would not explode? Bobby grinned. I didn't. But sometimes you have to take risks to save people. That evening, Jake received a message from Earth. The president wanted to speak with him personally. When the hologram appeared in his quarters, Jake could see the pride in the leader's eyes. Captain Morrison, the president said, I want you to know that the entire planet is proud of what you and your crew accomplished. You've shown the galaxy what humanity is capable of. Thank you, sir, but we were just doing our job. No, Captain. You are doing much more than that. The Galactic Council has offered humanity full membership and a seat on their military command. They want to learn from us. Jake was shocked. Full membership in the Galactic Council was something humans had dreamed about for decades. It would give Earth access to advanced technology and trade opportunities that could change everything. What did we do that impressed them so much? Jake asked, but the president smiled. You showed them something they had forgotten. For thousands of years, the galaxy's civilizations have grown comfortable and safe. They follow rules and procedures. They rely on superior technology and overwhelming force. They've forgotten how to adapt and improvise. And humans? Humans never had superior technology or overwhelming force. We learned to survive by being creative, by adapting to impossible situations, by refusing to give up even when everything seemed hopeless. The galaxy needs that spirit. After the call ended, Jake walked to the station's observation deck. Through the big windows, he could see ships from dozens of different species. For the first time, human ships were docked alongside them as equals. Lisa joined him at the window. It's amazing, isn't it? A month ago, nobody in the galaxy took U.S. seriously. And now? Now they're sending their best students to learn from us. Amy has 3 universities offering her teaching positions. Greg has been invited to design weapons for the Council fleet. Bobby has been asked to train their engineers. Jake nodded. It was hard to believe how much had changed. The Terra Nova's desperate rescue mission had revealed something about humanity that even humans didn't fully understand. Captain, Lisa said quietly, Do you think we really are different from other species? Jake thought about the question for a long time. Maybe. Or maybe we just never learned that some things are supposed to be impossible. The next morning, the Terra Nova departed Kepler Station with a new mission. They were no longer just explorers, mapping empty star systems. They were ambassadors for humanity, carrying a message to the galaxy. The message was simple: never give up, never accept that a problem cannot be solved, and never let anyone tell you that something is impossible. It was a message that would change the galaxy forever.